So when we're a creator and we see people out there that we respect and admire, we immediately make an assumption that we have to have this many X, right? This many followers, this many subscribers in order for us to make money because we assume those people are making money. I'm going to tell you right now, there are people that we work with to this day as I speak that have 100,000 plus followers, sometimes even more, sometimes 500,000 that are barely paying their bills.
On the 68th episode of Passion in Progress, Chris Michael Harris. Chris is a serial entrepreneur, business and performance coach, keynote speaker, online expert, and host of the Entrepreneur Hour, a podcast and YouTube channel. In this episode, we're talking about producing online products, making money online with the content that you're producing, and business tips in the entrepreneurial mindset that you need to be successful. Personally, I got a lot of information out of this podcast, and I'm hoping that you will too. If you know any of those other content creators or entrepreneurs out there that would also dig what's going on with this podcast and the kind of content that I put out, please share it with them because it really helps with what I do here on the show. Without further ado, let's dive into the 68th episode of the Passion in Progress show with host of the Entrepreneur Hour, Chris Michael Harris. What is up, Merce Nation? Javier Mercedes here for yet again another Passion in Progress show where we talk to inspiring individuals and hopefully through hearing their stories, you too are motivated to go out and pursue your passions as well. And today on the show, we have the podcaster of Austin, Texas, Chris Michael Harris. How's it going, man?
It's going well, man. Thanks for having me.
What's your podcast about, and what are you doing in the online space?
Yeah, so my show's called Entrepreneur Hour. It started about I think our anniversary this year, 4 years, is coming up.
200 episodes, man.
Just past 200 like 2 weeks ago, yeah. Mm-hmm. So it just kind of happened by accident. It was very serendipitous. I was having pretty high level conversations with other entrepreneurs about the experiences that I was having in my first startup. And for those that aren't familiar with my story, had rampant growth with my first business out of college, just kind of was doing it as a side hustle, ended up exploding and grew that to a multi-million-dollar company at like the age of 24, 25, which was nuts. Had no idea what I was doing. Contrary to maybe what the popular belief would tell you, given the success that we experienced, we were hanging on for dear life. So I'm having all these high-level conversations with people and recognizing the fact that this was value that why are we not repurposing that into some form of value for other people, right? To kind of pay it forward. And also too, maximizing my time and effort having these conversations. So it was built on that premise. It was real life conversations amongst entrepreneurs that were doing real stuff in the world versus I feel personally there are some podcasters out there that haven't built businesses, but they're talking about entrepreneurship because it's interesting. So I don't consider myself a podcaster. I consider myself an entrepreneur with a podcast because I like to make that distinction because it is different, right? It is a different platform. It is a different experience when you have somebody that's talking about this is what I'm experiencing versus, hey, I'm going to go through a rinse and repeat set of questions because I'm intrigued by entrepreneurship, right? And I don't say that to sound condescending. I hope it doesn't come across that way, but I just feel like it was a more authentic experience that I felt like we were trying to create. And the beautiful thing about that was within 2 weeks, we were trending top 5 in the world on iTunes at the time. I know it's Apple Podcasts now exclusively. But under business, health, and education, we were trending top 5 for like the better part of 8 weeks and new and noteworthy.
That's awesome. What a great catalyst here.
Right. Well, that was huge. And so that allowed us to, and this is the name of the game with podcasting. I know we're going to get into that, but it's all about leverage, right? And I think honestly, in any business, it's about leveraging whatever you have at your disposal. And I think there's a lot of people that don't recognize you have assets, whether you realize them or not. You have resources that you can leverage. And a lot of people just don't recognize that those things exist or that they're right in front of their faces, right? Being new and noteworthy and having that top 5 status for as long as we did, where people can actually go see, hey, he's not lying. This is true, right? We were allowed. I reached out and I had been building my LinkedIn for a long time and didn't know why at the time, right? Just connecting with people just because I'm like, this has to make sense at some point, right? Like networking and all that, like it makes sense. So I spend 5 minutes a day just connecting with people that I felt are going to be relevant. One of them was Ted Kingsbury. For those at the time, maybe that name doesn't ring a bell, but now he's the president of Shark Branding, which is Damon John's like side of his business, like the business side of Damon John, right? Where they manage all of their various investments and the people that come on Shark Tank and stuff like that. I reached out to Ted, who at the time, I don't remember his specific role, but he's a high riser within the Shark Group. I think it's Shark Group. They was Shark Brand. I think it's Shark Group now. Reached out and I was like, hey man, my show's trending right now. This is what I'm trying to do. These are the conversations I had. And he says, hey man, let me put you in touch with Damon. So within like 5 weeks, I went from, hey, this is just this idea that I have to record my conversations and put them on a podcast to holy crap, I'm trending worldwide. Holy crap, I have Dame and John coming on my show, which we then leveraged. Because it's at that point when you've gotten a Dame and John, you're leveraging his brand clout with other guests. So that eventually led to Barbara Corcoran being referred to me, led to me getting Grant Cardone, led to me getting Dave Asprey, Guy Kawasaki, Marie Forleo. I mean, dude, you name it at this point. I've been blessed and fortunate enough to have them on my show outside of like your Bransons and Tony Robbins, which are all in the works.
Oh yeah, I assume so.
But you know, those are goals that I have as far as having, and not from a vanity perspective, but it really helps you level up your own brand perception and the positioning of your brand when you can coincide it with people that have established brands themselves. So anyways, that's kind of in a nutshell what happened. It kind of took off from there. And then as far as what I do, unfortunately, and I know we're going to talk about this, but ran into a really nasty health crisis, right? So in the middle of that build, we had just gotten a $7.2 million valuation. I was completely bootstrapped. I'd never raised any institutional capital whatsoever. Didn't even do a pre-seed or a seed round. Was kind of skipping to get to my A, which is a huge mistake, and I don't recommend people do that. Mm-hmm. For those who don't know what that is, that's like your first round of, okay, so you have pre-seed, seed, and then an A round. It all just depends on how much you're raising and who you're raising it from, essentially, right? Yep. So for high level perspective, for those who don't know what that means, so to skip those steps and then jump straight to A, it is a little bit more of a challenge. So anyways, I'm like months away at this point. Like we had gotten some commitment letters, people wanting to finish due diligence with us, and kind of were putting the money together. And June of 2016. Got a really nasty diagnosis after, like, I was just feeling crappy for months, right? Like wondering what's going on, and then just kind of thinking it was like a mental thing, and like maybe I'm just, you know, not feeling passionate about what I'm doing anymore, or you know, like just like being in a rut maybe is a good way to describe it. And getting those lab results finally prompted by my wife, who's like, dude, like something's wrong with you. Like this isn't normal, right? I was having to go to the gym multiple times a day just to like have some kind of a boost of energy so that I could get through that workday, right? Mm-hmm. They took a look at it, and the doc's like, look, I've been in practice for 35 years. For someone your age, I've not seen anyone in this bad a condition. Like you're going to be cancerous if you're not already precancerous. Now you're going to be probably gone by the time you're 40 to 50 years old. Like it's over at the pace that you're running. Now it wasn't just, let me be fair and say it wasn't just from the startup. Like the startup, it's not like, you know, on my tombstone, it wasn't going to say the startup killed him. You know what I mean? Like that's not what it was. It was a major catalyst in that process. It turned out I had an undiagnosed/misdiagnosed ailment that had been going on for 20 plus years. We don't know exactly when the genesis point of that was, but roughly around the, you know, like 8, 9, 10-year-old range, in grade school. They went misdiagnosed for the majority of my life. That had then been really exacerbated and instigated by the stress of building a startup business. So pretty shortly after that, there were some other things that happened, and we just had to turn and say, you know what, we're going to axe this business and move on. We don't have a choice, because it sucks when
you have that big of an evaluation. You've
built something, you're that close to funding. And there were some things that kind of impeded that from finalizing. We had a really tragic motor vehicle accident with that business that was really exposed us to potential litigation, which any investor that sees it, they have that kind of exposure, because you bring on an investor, they're a partner in your business now, right? Like they're an equity shareholder in your company. So they're just as much exposed to it as you are when that happens. So we had to put funding on the back burner, and it was like, dude, I can't go anymore. So like that was a tough thing for me. Was the business didn't fail so much as I just didn't have the gas to keep going, right? Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I've then tried to do as just a recover business, right, was the podcast, because that launched pretty much around the same time of me getting sick. It's like, I have to do something. I can't just sit around and do nothing, right? But then also transitioning into how can I help entrepreneurs avoid these pitfalls, right? Like I kind of felt a little bit misled, maybe is the right way to put it. But entering into the entrepreneurship space, I feel like there was all of this like glitz and glamour and flowers and butterflies of like, you get out and you crush it and you make this money and everything's going to be great. And I didn't feel like anybody was like authentically talking about the challenges and the real like hard stuff, you know, that entrepreneurs experience. And so that was kind of my goal. So I started doing some coaching, which was amazing and fantastic. And then what I've done now, kind of keeping everything in a nutshell here, hopefully, is we're offering digital products. That's kind of the natural progression of going from coach, learning what people need, and then scaling that to information products, right? Now, that doesn't preclude me from being involved with other ventures, which I am, right? I'm involved with other ventures, in terms of whether it's, lifestyle businesses or whether it's primarily venture-backed tech-enabled startups that I'm a part of. So there's a lot of things that I do, but in terms of the online brand, that's what I do. We have a book club. We have a lot of different digital products. I know I mentioned you before we recorded, we have the burnout program, which helps people build a foundation that protects them from or pulls them out of burnout altogether. So there's a lot of different online offerings that we have in addition to the coaching that I do one-on-one still, although it's gotten to be a little bit more expensive and a little bit more advanced. It's for companies that are ready to scale versus like, hey, I have this idea, right? Like that's not great. Like that's why we have information products. Like go buy a $50 product versus pay me $5,000 to $10,000 a month to help you. Those are the people that are ready to scale, ready to raise money, so on and so forth. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. My story very much condensed into like a quick 5-minute. I know it's probably more elongated than people would like, but that's the shortest version I can make of my story so far.
I think a good hop off point from that is content creation in general with intent. Listening to your show, you have a good pulse on what actually brings in dollars when creating content. Can you speak to that in terms of, just to give you an idea, with the audience that listens to this, there's a lot of YouTube creators and entrepreneurs in that space, but I feel like there are a lot of the creator people. Yep. So it's people creating content, but I feel like with your content and what you do, you have this intent behind it, and you're like, I'm going to make money from what I'm doing, that kind of thing. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, in terms of how people can derive meaningful forms of monetization from their efforts, or in terms of what?
Let's start there.
So I like to start with the end in mind, right? Because I think a lot of people, what they end up doing is they're brilliant creative minds, and they're creating stuff, but they don't even have a vision as to where that's going to go, right? Yeah. Now, for a length of period of time, that's okay. But what ends up happening with a lot of people, when I see this a lot on Instagram, I see it on YouTube, I see it on pretty much any platform, is people are just creating content for the sake of creating content, or they have a misnomer about what their goals are, and oftentimes it ends up being vanity goals, right? So I want more subscribers, I want more likes, I want more engagement. It's like, okay, but why, right? And so I think here's the problem too, and I'll tell you this firsthand. These people that are going to go, they're listening to this, they're going to go look and see like, hey, what's Chris up to online? And they're going to check and see I have less than 10,000 Instagram subscribers. I have just over, or followers, I should say, I guess. On Facebook, I have just over 500 fans on my Facebook page. I have 22,000, which we did grow Twitter, 22,000 Twitter, but it isn't conducive.
I love how you're bringing this up because it's so, you already know the thought process of somebody listening.
It isn't conducive directly to someone that's making money, but the perception is that that's the case. So when we're a creator and we see people out there that we respect and admire, we immediately make an assumption that we have to have this many X, right? This many followers, this many subscribers in order for us to make money, because we assume those people are making money. I'm going to tell you right now, there are people that we work with to this day as I speak that have 100,000 plus followers, sometimes even more, sometimes 500,000, that are barely paying their bills. No BS, true story. And it's because of the reasons that I just mentioned. It's because you're measuring the success of your platforms or of your business based off vanity metrics, not off of things that actually drive money. So the biggest misconception about content creation is the numbers that it requires for you to generate a livable income or livable revenues, right? So in terms of actually doing that, it's case by case, right? I couldn't give you generalized wisdom that you can take and readily apply to what you're doing. But what I can say is that you need to analyze what other people are doing in the market. How are they making money, right? Like instead of looking at what, so and so is doing, right? Let's take Marie Forleo, for example, somebody whom I deeply admire and who's a friend of the podcast, been on the show. I'm actually a part of her affiliate program for B School. So puts out a year's worth of content free. Everything's free, right? Whether it's Marie TV, whether it's all of her stuff on social media, massive following. One time a year, she sells a program called B School. She sold that program before this year. She sold that program 44,000 times. And it's $2,000 a month. You can do the math. You can do the math. Whoa. But that's substantial. It's like $9 to $10 million a year. And that's 1 month out of the year that she promotes that one program. Doesn't sell anything else around the year. So here's the thing. And let's take a couple examples of people whom I think could be doing more than what they are. And I love these people. Let me be abundantly clear that I love these people, but I think they could be doing much more. Casey Neistat, perfect example. Casey is a brilliant creator on YouTube, like amazing. Up until 5 years ago, Casey Neistat was barely getting by, right? Despite the fact that he was doing as much as he was. Now, here's my thing. Analyzing that from a perspective of, hey, I want to be like Casey Neistat and I want to create this like lifestyle, whatever. Okay, fine. Here's the thing. What's the low-hanging fruit that Casey could create for himself that would have generated way more revenue than just, so people don't know this, but on YouTube, and you know this, what is it, 1,000 views for $2?
Well, it depends on the CPM, but yeah, for just to be general.
Not enough to live on.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Let alone create generational wealth for yourself. So why not, in this particular case, Casey could start with a first iteration, which is, hey, hire me to teach you how to make videos like Casey Neistat. People would pay $20,000 for a consultation for that, with how great he is. Or create a program, even a membership, where he teaches people for $29, $39 a month. This is what you do. There's curriculum, there's so on, and he doesn't have to build it. Somebody else could help him build it. He could put on Teachable, where he just basically unloads his knowledge as far as what he does and the expertise that he provides. So many content creators don't recognize and appreciate their own genius. Russell Brunson talks about this. He says that people don't recognize their own superpowers because to them, it's just a part of who they are. But they don't realize everybody else, it's deemed as a superpower, right?
Yeah.
So like what Casey does is very much, in my mind, superhero status. It's amazing what he does. He just has a very unique eye for that. But instead of just relying on someone else's platform to generate revenue for you, why not use that as a medium to drive to your business? So too many people try to create a business around their content versus using the content to create a business, if that makes sense. And I can get more specific with that.
This blew my mind. That's so true.
Yeah. And your funnel should always be down. Your funnel should always start from borrowed real estate, which is your content platform. Even YouTube, it's borrowed real estate, right? So what does owned real estate look like? Owned real estate is getting them onto your website, getting them onto your email list. And then guess what? Once you've done that, even with a basic lead magnet, right? Like something like, hey, my top 10 tips on how to do X, right? Or my top 5 tips on how to live a healthy lifestyle and still be a successful entrepreneur, right? Like that's it. Go download it here. It's 100% free. Just give me your email, right? And you've built a big audience. Funneling them down into your email list, guess what? If they're on your list and you're nurturing that list, you can sell anything. At some point, what's going to happen, this is what happened with my wife, is creating that content while she's building a service-based business. She was providing she was managing people's social media accounts for them. And I can get into the more of the background of that because obviously this is like barely just touching on it. But service provider, learning the industry, rolling up her hands and doing the work, creating content simultaneously, even if it's just one video a week, funding those people down with a lead magnet, free lead magnet, building the email list. People started begging her, will you please sell me something? Like, you're so good at what you do. I want to learn more. And not only did they tell her that they wanted to buy something, they told her what they wanted to buy. So as she's creating content, the videos in basically the topic of whatever she was discussing in those videos, contingent upon how well that performed and contingent upon how many views and engagement, stuff like that, and also who took those lead magnets that she was creating, would dictate the product that she needed to make in addition to them asking to sell them something. So it literally, clarity doesn't strike, it unfolds, which I'm actually stealing that. That's what she said. But in this case, that's what she says. It's actually a relevant thing. But literally she says that, and I think it's brilliant because that's exactly what happens. But so many people, they try to just jump out and just be like, hey, I'm creating content. And it's like, there's no intention, there's no direction, there's no nothing. And I always say this about entrepreneurship, you can't skip the steps. You can accelerate them, but you can't skip the steps, right? So in line with you building content, I would start in the industry, roll up your sleeves, do the work, find something, build your email list, and then eventually, as you keep doing this, something's going to unfold in terms of find a way to monetize that. Just be keen and aware of what those opportunities are as they present themselves.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. So if you're creating content, it gets to the point where people, because like even in my own experience, you start to get a pulse on like, what are the questions that people keep DMing me about?
100%.
And then you're like, ding, like either it's like, this is small enough to just like, this is a great video idea, or maybe there's something else more to be had here.
Yep.
In your own personal experience, is that how like the book club and all that other stuff came across?
That's how the book club started.
Yeah.
Because I was getting DMs as I was growing my social media, as I was blogging, as I was putting out content, I kept getting DMs and messages. And that's where you have to be attuned and you have to listen to what people are saying, right? Because you don't have to have all the answers. That is the biggest mistake entrepreneurs make, is thinking that they have to know everything. A more refined entrepreneur knows that all they have to do is listen well, right? And pay attention. So people are asking me, hey man, what books do you recommend I read? Or I'd like share a little excerpt from like a book that I was reading. They're like, what book is that? I want to buy that book. And so I was like, you know what? This is something that's been very impactful for me. So while I was sick and while I was recovering, one of the mistakes that I realized that I made was I now have a process. It's a 4-step process. It's simple and anybody can apply it. Learn, implement, test, and repeat. If you follow that in your entrepreneurial journey, many people, what they do is they're implementing, right? They don't know what they're implementing, but they're just running around doing stuff, right? So anything that you want to learn, acquire some specialized knowledge around that first. So go get a book about whatever it is that you're trying to execute. So let's say in this case, it's building your YouTube channel. You talked about Sean Cannell and VRA, right?
Yep.
Like I'm going through that program as I'm building, and I'm just continuing that process of I'm learning, I'm implementing what I learn, I'm testing it to see what works for me, and then I'm repeating that entire process, right? So it's just a cyclical thing that I can work through. But as we were doing that and people were asking about the book clubs, I was being attentive enough to recognize there's something here. And while I was sick, I realized that was a missing component of what I was doing previously as a more immature entrepreneur previously, even with the success that we had, is I was making my life harder than it had to be. And if I could read and utilize this formulaic process that I didn't know about at the time, that I kind of invented as I was going along, that basically it became a keystone habit in my life, reading, right? And so I want to share it with other people. And I realized that was also a big missing piece, not just for me, but for other people, right? And so as people were asking about that, asking about books and reading and stuff like that, I was like, how can we take this idea of reading and make it tangible for entrepreneurs, right? Because, and then that's where you get specific, right? Like that's the overarching idea. And then it's your job to figure out how that works for your specific audience, right? So I knew that there was no way that entrepreneurs, and I knew the resistance they were going to have was, dude, I don't have time to sit on 50 pages a day, right? And so many of us are conditioned to cram before the exam, right? Like day before, 24 hours, you're going to read the whole book or whatever. And we created a simple process of 7 to 10 pages a day. Just read 7 to 10 pages. You can finish any business book in a month. And that was like, boom, it was game changer, right? So it did take me understand. It wasn't like, and there's a reason I say that. I don't want to cough it up to people like, hey, look, all of your offers are just going to come to you, like it's tapping into, the power of the secret, or, the universe will, like bring it to you.
Tapping into the power of the secret is a great name of a book. If that's
right. Right. So, the law of attraction, like I'm not saying that I disagree with that. I think that the general idea is going to come to you, and then it's your job to kind of work out the specifics of how that's going to look and how you're going to present that to your audience. So in a very long-winded way of answering your question, that's how the book club kind of came to fruition. And then an important point to note here, with any offer, by the way, not just with this offer, but I've been doing this for 8 months now. We filled the first 100 seats within like 3 weeks of our launch, right? We did some collaborations. We were able to leverage our email list and build, a couple hundred, not a couple hundred, but a couple hundred people said they were interested. I think we filled like 1,500 or so seats of the book club pretty quick. Now, I didn't go crazy trying to like grow that, right? I didn't go crazy be like, yeah, we got something, let's go build. It was figuring out those idiosyncratic aspects of it, beta testing for the past 8 months. What do people really value from this so that I can scale that out? So too many people find that they get traction in something and then immediately jump to scale. Sometimes you need to take what Damon John told me, take affordable steps, right? Don't, when you figure it out and once you've beta tested and you really know you're dialed in on what people want, it will automatically start organically scaling itself because you know your people at a deep and meaningful level and your messaging is going to resonate with them. So we're now at a point where, hey, we're ready to scale this thing. We've been doing it for 8 months. We've been beta testing this thing and surveying the crap out of our people to figure out exactly what they value out of this book club. Now we're ready to scale it. So that's how that iteration should look. Again, generalized advice here in terms of other people. They're going to have to take that information and be like, okay, how does that work for me? And I'm happy to jump into some examples outside of my own as to how that could look for someone else. But that's the usual iteration as I see it with most businesses as far as how they go about idea or inception of their offer and to actually first iteration, second iteration, scale.
Can you talk about boots on the ground? Because when I saw you talk in person, the concept of boots on the ground, talking to people about whatever the concept that you have and testing that. And say I can't think of a specific example right now, but if you want to make an online course or something like that, some sort of digital product, do you just go straight into it if you think that like, oh, I'm an expert in this? Or do you find that does the market need this kind of thing?
Okay, so are you saying, can you jump straight to digital product or do you need to work like roll up your sleeves first?
Yeah, I guess. I guess from your perspective, you were in a service-based industry, and then like switching over to digital. If somebody is in, I feel like if you were in a service-based industry, you would know, and you just because day to day you'd be working with different clients, and then switching that over to a digital product, it would be kind of like, how do I do that type of thing? And then like just what you were saying, scaling it. If anybody has any idea and they think it should be like an online course, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Do they need to A/B test it? What does that look like?
More so my wife's example, maybe more than my own, is more relevant. Mine, if I hadn't done the coaching first, right? If I hadn't actually been taking on client work, and I talked about my rates now, and I'm slowly, as we continue to grow our online offering, I'm slowly kind of firing off the clients, because that's not scalable. I want to do something that's more scalable, and that's what I always envisioned doing. But I recognized, as I mentioned before, you can't skip the steps, right? So me working hands-on with clients, understanding the challenges that they're experiencing, like you and I talked about before, like you're just getting questions about certain things and then being like, hey, people are interested in this, right? So working hands-on with clients about the challenges and experiences that they're having in their business gave me an idea of, this is what people, obviously I could draw back my own experience, right? I could say like, this is what I experienced building a startup. And that was tremendously valuable. But here's what I learned. Doing it yourself and then teaching it to someone else are entirely different.
Yo, so true.
Right?
So
because
true.
everybody's inherently different.
Yeah.
And so what I realized was that I was telling people like, go do this because this is what I would do. And they're like, I'm not you, bro. Like they didn't say that, but I could see it failed because it's not them. So if you go in to build an online offering or a course or something and you're like, do it my way, right? And that's your whole focal point of your message. A lot of people are going to reject that because it's not catered to actually teaching them how to develop a strategy they can do on their own, right? So it's really, really important that you've not just done it, but you've done it for other people. So Ray Edwards, and this all leads to marketing. It all leads to marketing. Ray Edwards says, whom if you don't know who that is, Ray Edwards is one of the most brilliant copywriters. Amazing, amazing dude. I just had him on the podcast a couple months ago, and we read his book in my book club community, How to Write Copy That Sells. And he says you need to prove three things. You need to prove that you've done it for yourself, you've done it for other people, and you can do it for them, meaning whoever this prospective customer is. Well, guess what? I was missing that second part because I hadn't done it for other people, right? I had only done it for myself. I'd only built a company myself, right? So I needed to roll up my sleeves, and it felt counterintuitive. I had to really swallow my pride because it's like, hey, I went from building a multi-million-dollar company to now I'm doing like, I did volunteer work, right? For like FI and stuff like that, for Founder Institute, which is a local accelerator program. Well, they're global, but for the local chapter here, I did that. That's not a paid thing, but I needed to get to know these people. I needed to learn how I could teach people how to do things, how I could teach people how to build a business, right? Because that's something I hadn't done before. In addition to that, I'm taking on clients, and I started charging like, hey, I'll give you a session for $75. Like that's it, right? So here I am going from making a lot of money with my first startup to $75 here. I even got on some platforms where it's like, you know, hey, people have business questions. I forget the name of the platform now, but people have business questions. You answer them for free, right? I got involved with my wife's community because at that point her business had been around for like 4 or 5 years. I'm answering questions in there. Like I really immersed myself in the idea of like coaching people before I ever even got to the point of working on my info product, right? So in whatever space you're in, you need to find ways to invest in those first initial stages of your business, because here's the deal. The people that win, and go look at anybody that does a good job with their marketing, right? Anybody that really, and here's why this is important. Offline world is about sales, right? Like I could get by because I grew up in a sales environment. My dad's a salesman, and I just grew up in that environment. I was really interested in what he was doing. I went I went from the offline to the online space, and I was selling like multiple $100,000 contracts. Like I've been in very prestigious, like Fortune 50 type meetings with companies in a sales capacity. I'm like, I'm going to be good. Like I'm going to come into the online space. These $50 products, what? Like I've sold $130,000 contracts. Like I'm good, bro.
Nobody cares.
You know, but no, but it's not even that. Like I wasn't dialed in because the online world is about marketing. The offline world is about sales. It doesn't mean you don't have to market or you don't have to do sales in either of those. But if your marketing prowess is not dialed in the online space, you're not going to sell. You're not going to sell ice to an Eskimo, like period. Like, or I guess that would mean you're good at sales. but you get what I'm saying. Like
exactly.
Whatever metaphor you want to apply here. The marketing is what sells online. And the only way you get to the marketing is if you've done those steps. If you know your people at such a deep level that your copy or that your sales messaging or your marketing messaging is so dialed in that it speaks to people on such a deep, intimate level. Because here's the deal. In the offline world, let's say I'm trying to sell you X, right? I'm providing whatever service, whatever product. I have the ability to present it to you, and I can watch your facial reactions. Like I grew up in that environment. I was trained to be able to read like physical responses or even verbal cues and things of that nature. So I can tell like not only how you responded, but with what tone did you respond, right? And so on and so forth. And in that, I can read your objections. I can see that I said something that didn't resonate with you. And I'm like, here's the deal, man. I know that's tough to come over. I know it's a challenging thing. I know that sounds like a lot of money. Here's the thing. And then I can counter that and say, you know what? I like this guy. He gets me. He's reading me. I appreciate that. I'm willing to give this a shot. In the marketing world, in the online space, you have one shot, right? They see one sales page, they see one post or whatever, and that's the chance that you have to communicate with them. So what if you're getting that wrong? What if you're not speaking to anyone? And the biggest mistake that I see, the biggest way that I think people are really killing themselves in the online world is that either they're most of the time they're being really general, right? Because they don't know who their people are. If you see people using generalities and they're not specific and they're not speaking to a single person, it's because they don't know who their audience is. So they're just trying stuff, right? And they think, and they focus on the features, right? It's like, well, it provides this and this and this and this, but you're not telling me what the benefit is specifically for this unique avatar that you're trying to sell to, right? So getting to know those people, you understand them at such a deeper level that compared to the people that are staying general because they don't have that in-depth knowledge of their avatars, you have in-depth knowledge and you're literally able to use examples and things people have said, like client work or whatever you've done, to basically bring that into your marketing message where people read that and they're like, this person gets me. And I'll take it a step further. With our ads now, we're so dialed in with our Facebook ads. We're so dialed into our people. We'll have people respond in the comments for the ad and they'll tag people and be like, I told you Facebook's listening to my conversations. Like, because we're that dialed in on who they are that they swear that somebody's listening to their thoughts. That's how good you need to be in the online space. But you don't get there by just saying like, yeah, bro, I want to sell info products. You know, like that is a crawl, walk, run process, right? And so you that's why I say you can't skip the steps. You have to work to that point. You have to invest in that. And you can do that not just with your own business as a service provider, but many people I see, they actually start with a job, right? In the industry that they want to work in. I just interviewed a guy yesterday and same ordeal. Worked for one of the dinosaur companies that's been around forever, right? A well-known company, and worked for them for 12 years. When he transitioned in his business, he went from that to multi-millions like that. Why? Because it was basically a paid internship. His job was, right? So I think many people specifically, and this is where I love millennials. I love that we don't accept the status quo, and I love that we're willing to push the envelope and want to do more and be more and all these various things. But sometimes that entitlement, I feel, comes in, and yes, we're entitled. I'm entitled. Like like we're like, and it's good. Like it's like, why and why not? Like, why should we be doing things the way we were, and why not do something better, right? So that all said, one of the things we need to do is we need to slow down. We need to slow down and recognize that in this season of my life, this is going to help me with the next season. And I think with content creation, that is a huge part of it because we don't recognize, even if it's having a job right now, I'm learning valuable skills that are all going to apply to my business if and when I'm ready to start that. And that could be info products.
Info products in today's day and age. One of the concepts that I love that you talk about is just being ahead, like one step ahead of where some people are in terms of being able to coach them or what people might see as relatable in terms of, can they teach me something? So I love where you're at right now with your YouTube channel because there's a lot of people listening that are in that same area where you are very successful in other mediums. And then I think with the knowledge that you've garnered over building what you've done so far on other platforms, what's your strategy for what you're doing right now for YouTube?
Well, so there is one, a lot of people talk about growth hacks and things of that nature and like how you know, like all these, I remember for a while, like the follow, unfollow on social media was like, oh yeah, you follow somebody and then they follow you back. And I didn't feel terrible about that, but it definitely felt kind of black hat to me to be doing that. So I think the number one growth hack that I see is collaboration, right? So you have a bigger channel than I do. You've been doing this much longer than I have, right? So me providing value to your audience and you having a much bigger audience than that of my own, that's a great growth hack, right? Because there's many people that might watch this and say, you know what, that guy's not that bad. I can tolerate him. Like he might have some things that could benefit me, and I'm gonna go subscribe to his channel too, right? So now, if I had gone to, let's just say for lack of someone better or whatever to pull up, like I could find a million examples. But a lot of people, what they try to do is they swing straight for the fences, and like I'm cool with that. Like that's like that's admirable. And I don't want to dismiss that and say like, hey, you shouldn't do that because, hey, swing for the fences. But here's the deal. If I went to Gary Vee and I'm like, hey, Gary, I just started my YouTube channel. Will you have me on, bro? Will you help me out? And so many people are like, nobody wants to help me. And it's like, yeah, but there are people that are within your reach that you can provide value to their audience, value to their platform that's going to help you. So for me, I'm learning about the platform, right? Because a lot of people just jump in and start doing stuff and it drives me crazy. I have a couple friends. I'm going to put them on blast publicly. I'm not going to give their actual names, but I'm going to put them on blast because they see that we've been doing content, meaning my wife and I, and it's gone really well. And they've been like, ask me about it. And they started to try to jump into YouTube as well. Like right around the same time I did. Like they saw that I did it. So they were like kind of following and like, hey, I want to do it too. And I was kind of picking at them and teasing them because they didn't do their thumbnails right. So they both look like monkeys in their, in their pictures. They're like, like weird like thumbnail pictures because they didn't even add a custom thumbnail. There's no description. There's no tags. I have vidIQ so I can see what their score is on their video. Like they haven't done any homework at all. They're just thinking that, hey, I'm just going to put content out there and what have you. So I see too many people just trying stuff, right? And also not leveraging things that are directly at their disposal. So you were giving me feedback before we started, right? Like that's great. Like you've come to things that I've spoken at and hopefully I provide value to your life. You're providing value to mine. So there are ways that you can collaborate with other people that is going to be very serving to what you're trying to accomplish. So, and in reference to what you're talking about in terms of find people that are, like directly ahead of you, I think that's a really valuable point to bring up because there's too many people in the online space, specifically with digital products. And I know this isn't what you asked me, but this is really important to address this. They're like, yeah, okay, Chris, well, you're talking about creating products and like blah, blah, but like, I'm not as good as, Peter McKinnon. Like, how could I create videos teaching people how to do this? Like, Peter's the best. And it's like, here's the deal, man. Like, Damon John sells products about tips on building a business, as do I. So if I had that mindset, I would just say, well, Damon's already doing it. So for one, you need to live in a world of abundance because buying an info product is like dating, right? Like there's some people that are just your cup of tea and there's some people that aren't, right? Like some people you just get along with and some people just don't. Just because you're an attractive person doesn't mean that every woman in the world wants to marry you or vice versa. Every male wants to marry this particular woman, right? There's someone for everyone in that regard. No more so than in the info product space. But here's the deal. You need to be the people that you serve, just focus on the people that are one step below where you are, right? Like Damon is so high up in terms of what he's done, right? That it's sometimes unrelatable. Yeah. And I can validate that statement because people immediately think that some of these big guests that I've had on my podcast, that they are the most downloaded episodes by far. And I'm telling you right now, where you're going with this. I'm telling you right now, the people that come on that are in a situation where they're just starting their business and they're going through real challenges, real authentic challenges as far as what they're doing, even like coming up with a business idea or how to make money or whatever, those get downloaded head and shoulders above even the biggest names out there because it's more relatable, right? So you right now have an advantage. Just focus on that avatar that's just below where you are. If you're just starting out, create a product around, hey, what your first 10 days of your YouTube channel, done, right? Like what did you just go through that you can teach someone else because you just went through that? You're more relatable because you just did it, right? So there's many examples that we could go through of people where they just immediately dismiss that they have something to offer just because they're new at doing something, right? But Nathan Latka, perfect example. He actually lives here. He created a podcast and he actually does pretty well with it. I don't remember the name at this point. But The Top. That's what it's called. I don't love Nathan as a person, as a human being. I think he could be a little bit arrogant, but I said this on my own show. It's not, like I think he would agree with me, honestly. But
you're starting beef with other podcasters on my show.
I throw shade all the time, man. I throw shade at Ty Lopez.
I gotta like listen to your podcast, and I was like, man, I was just over to Javier's podcast. What a schmuck.
No. I'm fair when it's warranted. But anyway, so he put out a blog right after he started his podcast where he taught you basically how to get new and noteworthy. And I followed it to a T and I got new and noteworthy, right? So like that was value that he created as he was going through his journey. And so many content creators, they just don't think about that. Like, hey, what I just did right now is going to be valuable to somebody. Even if it's just an email, even if it's just a lead magnet, even if it's just building your email list with that, like, hey, download my top 10 tips to get new and noteworthy on Apple Podcasts, right? Like something like that. So you don't have to be everything to everyone. Just focus on who is right below where you are that's trying to take those next steps. And that's going to give you either a product that you can sell or something to build your email list with. So that was a really important thing you brought up that I want to make sure we touched on.
Yeah, I love your dissection of X's and O's of implementation and things of that nature on your show and your authenticity. Because, like, a prime example, I think on one of your most recent episodes, you had Wix as one of your sponsors. But even while you were doing this, the sponsorship for Wix, you're like, I use WordPress. And just the way that you talked about it was like, but I mean, my first website was Wix.
Yeah.
And can you talk about authenticity in today's day and age of online, and especially with a platform like podcasting or YouTube creation or anything like that, like where to draw a line or however you want to talk about that subject. But I think it's something that you have brought up a lot in your most recent episodes.
Man, so I will say this. I sometimes get myself in trouble for this.
Did you get in trouble for the Wix thing?
No. It's because I told. So here's the thing. I've learned in business to just be brutally honest, right? And the reason being is that so often we enter into arrangements and agreements that we don't believe in because we're just so apt to say yes. So I read the book Essentialism, which I highly recommend. One of my favorite books of all time, business or otherwise. And it really helps you learn the power of saying no, because no means yes to the things that you do believe in or the things that you do need to apply yourself to. Like, it's a brilliant, like every single entrepreneur needs to read it, because we're all just doing stuff, but we're not doing stuff that actually moves the needle because we're just out of obligation or a sense of feeling like we have to say yes. We say yes to way more than we should, right? So Wix approached us about being a sponsor for the show, and I don't agree with building a Wix website. And I told them that. I've told that to Belay, who's another one of my sponsors, because I'm like, look, I use onlinejobs.ph, which we've used them for years. Our entire team in the Philippines is from onlinejobs.ph. I'm like, I don't believe that as a startup entrepreneur, you should go pay $2,000 to $3,000 a month for an outsourced party when you can go get somebody to onlinejobs.ph for $2.50 an hour. That's not responsible for me to offer that advice, right? And so part of establishing people that trust you is telling people what you actually think, right? And so I was like, look, here's the deal. Wix and Belay, I said, I'm willing to use you guys, but I'm going to tell people when they should use you guys. Because here's the thing. You get to a point of scale, onlinejobs.ph doesn't work anymore because you need higher quality. You get what you pay for. You need higher quality. You need higher quality work. Not to say that our people aren't fantastic, because we got really lucky. They're amazing. But there are also 13-hour time difference between us and them. So during the day, there's things that we need to do that we sometimes have to stay up late to have a meeting with them. So there are things where you would need an outsourced party that is domestic and does have specialized knowledge. For example, Belay's really good at outsourced bookkeeping. I'm not going to trust somebody that I just hired that I never met in person to see my books for $2.50 an hour. Like, that's not a proposition that I'm going to entertain. So I told Belay, here's the deal. I will sponsor you on my show, or allow you guys to be a sponsor, but I'm going to tell them for this specific thing. And I'm going to use both of those sponsors. I told the same thing to Wix. I'm like, look, there are people like my father who is a small business owner, and there's no way he's going to learn WordPress. And I know that, nor should he, right? Like that's something that's just not something that's going to happen. So I'm going to use you guys. I'm going to allow you guys to be a sponsor, but I'm going to tell people I recommend WordPress and that I use WordPress.
I love it.
But the thing is, the fact, so it's not mean, right? It's being transparent and them recognizing as well, like, you know what? I respect the fact that you told us straight up, and that makes them trust you even more because you were completely transparent with them to begin with. So it does get me in trouble. It does come across sometimes as arrogance. I've been accused of that. And I'm not dismissing that as a notion. I can be I tried to sprinkle in some humility and share my own struggles and my own weaknesses and stuff like that. But sometimes when I make these statements, it does come across as arrogance in that, oh, I'm just telling people how it is and stuff like that or whatever. But in terms of your people trusting you, if you want people to trust you, you have to shoot them straight. Because here's the deal. Let's say I get on and talk about how great Wix is, and then people go to my website and see I'm using a WordPress website. What does that say? It says I'm full of
yeah, exactly.
You know? Yeah. It says I'm full of crap and I'm just trying to sell you stuff, but I'm not being real. So when I tell you something, you can take it to the bank because I'm going to tell you what I believe. And I could be right, wrong, or indifferent. It doesn't matter. If I'm wrong and you can go find something and you feel is right, great. Pursue your heart, right? Go after that. If you think that's the best thing for you to do is build a Wix website, do it, right? Like, that's fine. But I'm not going to be disingenuous with someone or sugarcoat something that I don't believe for the sake of promoting a sponsor, right? Or making a few bucks, because in the long run, I want people to listen to what I say and be like, you know what? he might be wrong, he might be misinformed, but it's what he truly believes in, right? So that was always his thing. And I had somebody actually stand up for me because this arrogance thing came up recently. That's why I'm bringing it up.
Yeah.
And I can get into that story if you want me to, but it's kind of irrelevant to what we're talking about. But we told our community, like, this is what was said. It was a long-term member of ours, a customer of ours for 2 years, made the comment of like, Chris comes across as arrogant, right? And so obviously I'm going to listen to that. It's a long-term member. They paid us a lot of money, right? And we told our community, like, here's the deal. This is what was said. No, like, this is not the norm. This is a very, very, this is a rarity that this has been said. But this is what happened. And just so you guys know, this is why I act the way I act and do the things I do, whatever. Just to kind of like bring it up to make people know, like, we're aware of it, and you know, we care, right? We don't. It's not like I don't care that people think that, especially paying customers. And people are like, conviction and arrogance are two different things. And I was like, you said that better than I could have said it myself. So I am very convicted to the things that I believe in and the things that I've done that have worked because I want people to get results, right? So I'm not gonna sell you a Wix site if I know that Wix is basically a pretty chassis, but the engine is not what WordPress is. If you want to build traffic to your website, you need a WordPress website. There's no way around that. And there's no excuse because Divi and some of these theme builders now are just as good as the plug and plays that you get with Squarespace or Wix. So yes, in that particular instance, I'm being abundantly authentic. And here's what's going to happen. If you do that, you're going to turn some people off. There's going to be people that call you arrogant. There's going to be people that say whatever. But here's the thing. The people that love you will love you even harder, right? And those are going to be that you're going to find that if you put those on a scale, right? The people that end up loving you because of your authenticity and because of you just saying the things you think, not Trump tweet status saying what you think, but like, you know, yeah. But like just being real with people and saying and speaking your truth. You're going to have a few people that you ruffle their feathers, but the people that do love you, they're going to become super fans because they're like, dude, I love this guy and I love that he just says it like it is because I'm tired of this sugar-coated nonsense I hear everywhere else.
Can you just touch on with that to accentuate it when you don't know something about a particular subject? If somebody's yeah.
Say it. Be like, I don't know. I have not experienced that. This is what I've heard. And on the sponsorship line, I've said that. Shopify came to me, same thing. And they're like, we'd love to, to be a sponsor of your show. And I'm like, great, because you guys, from what I've heard, are the best e-commerce site builder. And I don't think you should build custom code a website for an e-commerce business because you're going to spend thousands of dollars. And WordPress is going to take you way too long for all the various functionality you need for an e-commerce business. So I'm like, look, guys, this is a sponsor. I know friends and I have people that are in the e-commerce space that swear by Shopify, but I've not built a Shopify site before. So just own it, man. Just own where you are, own what you know, and own what you don't.
Man, I hope the listeners get so much value out of that. It's breath of fresh air. One of the other things that this is, sorry, but I have to like jump from topic to topic because there's like so many things that I want to like talk to you about. So just as a side turn, there's this concept that I've been talking to, and it's just come up with like the last couple episodes of guests, and your mindset as an entrepreneur, actually living like a healthy lifestyle or being healthy or whatever that means to you, how does that affect your decisions as a business person?
To everything.
Do you want to give an example, or do you want to talk about it a little bit?
So as I mentioned earlier when I was talking about my story, my business didn't die. I ran out of gas, right? Like that would easily be at this point with the pace we're on with the funding that we were going to receive. We had very, very aggressive projections for those coming years, like $30 to $50 million projections, right? But I ran out of gas, right? So here's the deal. We walk around feeding ourselves beer and pizza, or the equivalents thereof, but we would never feed our businesses that and expect to get positive results.
Such a great metaphor,
right?
Oh, that's awesome.
so how do you expect, specifically as an entrepreneur, like you can get by in a 9 to 5, right? Because unless you're a linchpin in your company, right? Shout out Seth Godin. You are cog in the wheel. You could take a sabbatical and be gone for a month, and things are going to relatively keep churning the way that they should, right? But if you're an entrepreneur and so much rests on your shoulders, you are the most valuable asset to the company. You may not see it that way, and you may not be compensated that way, but you are the most valuable asset to the company for a long time. And even into the multi-millions, you are still the most valuable asset. Now, if that is the case, and you are in a situation like I was in where you run out of gas and the business fails as a result, it means you haven't built to scale. It means you haven't built a solid foundation. I'm recognizing and owning that I didn't do that, right? And I didn't realize just how bad that was until I dropped out, and I didn't realize that I was the glue, the engine, and everything else, right? And that was my mistake. Because some people, that's a whole nother topic of conversation. I'm not, stop, focus. So many people kind of lose sight of that. But man, like here was the big misconception that I had, right? Is like, I'll be healthy when, I'll be happy when, right? And whatever that is when I'm successful, when I've made this amount of money, when I'm this, right? When I'm that, right? So happiness was a destination. The problem is, or healthiness was a destination in my mind. The problem is that, as we very well know, entrepreneurship takes 2 to 3 times longer than you expect, costs 4 times more than you think it's going to, right? And so what happens is you don't have the gas, you don't have the longevity to keep going. You don't have the personal sustainability to keep going, right? And so the person that wins in entrepreneurship is the person that's able to still consistently keep putting in the amount that they're putting in, time, over day, over week, over year, so on and so forth, right? So we grossly overestimate what we can do in a year. We underestimate what we can do in 10, right? So by building sustainability, by focusing on some of the big performers, they focus on 3 initiatives at a time. I have a daily big 3. People are like, 3 things? What? I can do more than 3 things in a day. Yeah. And it's like, dude, you get that core competency, you nail those 3 things in addition to the other tasks, but make sure those main 3 things that are really going to drive forward for you are those things that get done. You're going to find that day over day consistency is going to outwin the day over someone that's a flash in the pan, right? And so in order to do that, you have to have mind, body, and everything else in alignment. And for those, I'll challenge them to go look into this in terms of, building themselves up in terms of their health. Look at the gut-brain axis. Look at that connection, because we're learning more and more and more about neurological function as it relates to what we consume, as it relates to our microbiome in our gut, right? And that was my case. So I had a massive, severe case of intestinal dysbiosis. And here's the thing: for years, as I mentioned, I was misdiagnosed. They thought it was ADD, which I'm definitely ADD. You can tell having a conversation with me, like I'm all over the place. Like I'm not denying that, right? But what's interesting is, as I've cleaned my gut up, and as I've had a cleaner diet, as I've been taking probiotics and prebiotics and all these various things, all of a sudden I'm running a book club. I couldn't read a page growing up in school. I honestly, I would read and I'd be like, wait, what did I just read? I had to find ways to kind of hack that. And now I've just enjoyed so much my ability to retain information and learn. So cognitive awareness, cognitive function, stress resiliency, all these various things, man, it all ties into one another. And what I've learned is, if you want to do more in the world, you have to first be more. And the only way you can be more is if you have healthy mind, body, and spirit, period. If you don't have that, you're running around with a crutch, right? That's it. You're running around with a crutch. And eventually the business is going to be sprinting and you're not able to sprint. You need to be able to level up yourself with your business. And that's common sense. That doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out okay, that makes sense. That's pretty logical assessment there, right? So in my case, the business was sprinting full steam ahead and I was done, man. I was tapping out. I was crawling. So, a lot of people don't feel that pain yet. And this is my kind of mantra right now is, don't wait until you're where I was. Don't wait until you get lab results telling you, bro, you're going to die at 40 if you keep on this pace, right? Take care of yourself now. Invest in that now. Because if you have big and lofty ambitions and goals, you need to start leveling yourself up. Because here's the thing. The beneficiary of my efforts is not me. It's my business. And I got that backwards for so long, thinking that, hey, business grows, I'll be happy. Business grows, I'll be healthy. Business grows, I'll be this. Now it's, I'm healthy and thriving, my business exponentially grows. I'm investing in that, my business exponentially grows. So I'm putting one foot out ahead and the business is the beneficiary, not the other way around. And that was a huge misconception that I had, and almost all entrepreneurs have right now, except for the elite few.
That's me making a notion that my mind was blown. So recently I've been doing, do you know Andy Frisella, MFCEO podcast? Yep. I've been doing 75 hard and I'm about 8 weeks in. Do you know the challenge at all?
I don't.
Drink a gallon of water, work out twice a day. One of the workouts has to be outside. Follow a strict diet, no alcohol. It's a lot of healthy things. Read 10 pages of a book, of a self-dev or business book.
I love it.
And take a progress picture every day. But the reason I bring it up is because, and probably the reason why it's been coming up in a lot of the podcasts is because I'm recognizing such a shift in how I show up every single day in terms of, I wasn't bad in a lot of my health, but I wasn't going out of my way to go take a walk or spend time outside. Being a video editor, you're behind a computer, putting together some big pieces for long periods of time. And just to iterate on what you're talking about, I'd sit down at the computer and I'd be banging out more material or being able to think about things in a certain way,
Yep.
in a more efficient way than if I wasn't living a healthier lifestyle. And I would just just what you said, if you show up in a healthier way, everything else starts to compound behind it.
Yeah.
Which I think is awesome.
Yeah. And the big misconception that we have about people that are more successful than we are, the people we admire, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that they're just working 24 hours a day and killing themselves. And dude, I promise you, most startup entrepreneurs may be working more hours than some of the people that are highly, highly successful that we admire, right? And that's not to say these people have gotten to the point where they're lazy or they can afford to do that. It's they're very calculated in their efforts, but they also, and Dave Asprey talks about this, amazing, but a lot of people have this difficulty with detaching and disengaging and taking care of their health because they're like, well, it's wasted time. So he calls it his uploading time.
Mm-hmm.
So to kind of like place that mental shift in his brain of like, I'm not taking time off. I am upgrading my software and doing this, right?
You're coming out with all the metaphor bombs, man.
Right. So here's the deal, man. So I've had a lot of conversations, and the majority of them, in terms of highly, highly, highly successful, high-performing entrepreneurs, the biggest thing is they know their numbers. And I don't mean financial numbers, right? Like they are constantly. So I get my labs done once a quarter. I'm getting my labs done this month, right? I have a functional medicine doctor that I work with because here's the deal. I don't have a problem with MDs. Like people, I attack Western medicine as in addition to some of the other things that I throw shade at. But honestly, Western medicine has its place. But here's the deal. You drive your car, metaphor, you drive your car around and you wait until the maintenance light comes on to go to the shop, right? You don't get oil changes, you don't do any of the other things. You're gonna have a pretty expensive bill when you go to the shop when that check engine light comes on, right? But what do they tell you to do? Get your oil changed, check your fluids, rotate your tires, get an alignment, all these various things. Know what's going on with your vehicle because that's gonna allow for the long-term sustainability of your vehicle, right? So I wear this thing. This tells me where my energy levels are, where my stress level is. I wear another one at night for sleeping. I mean, dude, I am fastened up to some kind of biometric device throughout my day, regardless, 24 hours a day. So this was huge, but literally my business coach told me this week, he's like, man, I've never met not one single high-performing, successful entrepreneur that doesn't know their health numbers. Like not a single one. So
wow,
that's the difference, man. We're playing it small by not knowing those things. You talk about growth hacks and all these other things that I think are BS. Other than the collaboration one, which is a great one. Most of them are crap. Mm-hmm. But man, the biggest hack that you can get is, what if this, instead of your 2 to 5, you're sitting there because your blood sugar's spiking and you're like, oh God, I shouldn't have that pizza, carbo load, blah, and you don't feel like working versus, dude, I'm just now hitting my stride. Like I'm still fired up and amped and whatever. Like people call me Mr. Intensity. That doesn't just happen because I have that personality or that disposition. I think people think that like people are just innately that way. Dude, that's been years of me not putting crap in my body and years of me nurturing my health to be able to be like, you know what? Between 2 and 5, I'm rocking and rolling, right? Like I'm ready to get after it because I built myself up to that point, right? So a lot of people, they're losing a lot of that efficiency time, right? Because they're not at a point where they're healthy, functioning, and thriving like they could be. And that's massive opportunity cost.
Yeah, just to add again to what you're saying, and it's weird. I love coffee, love it. Have an espresso machine downstairs and everything. But after I started this challenge, I got like a week in and I didn't even notice that I wasn't even drinking coffee. Like it didn't even cross my mind.
Or just throughout the day?
No, at all. And then I went to I love making espresso for my wife, and then she asked me for one, and I was like, oh, what? I haven't even made coffee in like forever. And I can tell like 36 hours after having coffee or not having coffee, like headache, all that kind of stuff, caffeine withdrawal, and none of that happened. And I don't know, I haven't read enough about it, but I don't know what the whole, like, if you're leading the active life, drinking a bunch of water, like all that stuff. But whatever it is that I'm doing now, I'm not like, I knew if I had coffee, like I could still get like super focused and everything. But I'm at like a level where I just am I want to say complacent in a good way. Like my energy levels are like, okay, where I can just coast the whole day and just do what I need to do. Yeah. And that's it, I guess. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, so a lot of people demonize the caffeine aspect, and I'm not accusing you of doing this, but a lot of people do. 1 cup in the morning is actually really good for you. Mm-hmm. Like it's the people that drink it and they're drinking it at 5, 6 o'clock at night because it's going to take you 6 to 8 hours for the caffeine to leave your system. So you're not going to naturally enter into the cycle of your serotonin converting to melatonin before you go to sleep. So you're going to have issues, and it's going to keep you awake. And if you're affecting your sleep, that's obviously huge. Circadian rhythm, if you're jacking that up, that's huge problems, right? But first thing in the morning, having a cup of coffee. I drink matcha tea every single morning, which is amazing because it has L-theanine, which is an amino acid, and actually provides a calming effect on your parasympathetic nervous system, right? Mm-hmm. So you're getting the energy rush that you get from the caffeine, which is good. It helps with a lot of different things in terms of blood circulation and so on and so forth, and neurological function and cognitive function. But you're also not getting that like jitteriness and like the ups and downs and crash and stuff. So if you're going to drink caffeine, if you're going to drink coffee, one of the big things you need to look at is it needs to be a high quality bean, right? So there's a lot of rancid acids and stuff like that come with these like less good, like a lot of chemicals involved with a lot of the coffee beans that we traditionally get that has a big impact on the actual quality of the bean itself, right? So there's nothing wrong with a cup of coffee in the morning. It's just when a cup turns into 5 or 6 or 7 cups a day that it gets a little bit excessive, and then it starts affecting your circadian rhythms where it gets bad.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I'm just, at this point, I'm like avoiding coffee just for a disciplinary act of like, you know what? Avoid it for 75 days and see what happens. And now I'm like this, but I can guarantee you, I still love the smell of coffee, love like, the act of making coffee and everything.
Yeah, and I think the detox is good too. For you to go for a while without having it, I think is a great detox, right? But I wouldn't do it just out of spite and get off completely just out of some sense of obligatory self-discipline or what have you, right? Yeah. Like work with your body, because if it's going to allow you, if you're functioning now, but this is going to allow you to function at a higher level, that's an amazing biohack that you can take advantage of, right? And that's what I love about smart drugs, because smart drugs do tap into that, right? And they do have caffeine in them, but that's the future. Smart drugs and nootropics, like that's the future. Like getting healthy and getting your body to having a solid foundation, and then throwing the smart drugs on top of that, dude. Every single entrepreneur in 12 years is going to be doing that. Like the fact that we're not already doing that, and the fact that they've been around as long as they are, is preposterous to me, right? And I can't do it right now because my endocrine system is too compromised, even with the recovery that I've experienced. But you better believe in 6 months, you talk to me, dude, I'm going to be stacked on stacked with nootropics and smart drugs for sure.
Man, I love you as a guest, man. This is awesome. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. There's 2 questions that I ask at the end of each podcast. First one is, why do you do what you do?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So this is going to sound like super cliche, but it's the honest to God truth. When I was younger, I remember I told my mom, like, I've just had this like burning desire, even since I knew like what that entailed, of I wanted to make a positive impact in the world. Like I had this like real fear of being irrelevant, right? Of like just, and there's nothing wrong with like living and dying and saying you lived and enjoying and loving your family and so on and so forth. Like there's like, that's beautiful. That is an amazing, amazing thing. And I think that even the fact that you existed on this planet and were given life is something that like we honestly take for granted, right? I think that goes without saying. But there are others though that are fueled by things that are inexplicable. It's just how we're hardwired, just inherently or innately. And part of that for me was I want to make an impact. And I want to make a difference in whatever way that I possibly can. And I didn't, obviously, at 5 years old, know, or how old I was, know what that would look like.
Yeah.
But the big thing for me is like, you know, if I can create a business that employs, my first business employed, it were part-timers, but over the course of 3 to 4 years, pushing 5, we had hired over like, I think 750 people, almost 1,000 people, like that gave college students a way to earn money over the summer before they went back into school. And many of them used that experience to go on and get amazing jobs and using us as a reference. Like, so we made a tremendous impact. And not only that, but we instilled hopefully some values that we've built into our company culture that they go on and become better human beings. Look at a Chick-fil-A, right? Like you become an extension of the culture of Chick-fil-A in your personal life, right? That's part of what they've created. And it's amazing. And so what you see is it has an impact on families, the way kids are raised, the way they operate in their communities, the way that they volunteer, the way that they show up at their place of worship, whatever, right? Like it has a ripple effect. And so I hope that we've created that. And I was like, for me, it's always, how can I make an impact at a bigger and bigger level? And so for me, creating content's like a drug, right? Like I show up and I'm like, for opportunities like this, and you've got, you know, over 5,000 or 8,000 people, whatever, subscribe to your channel at the time they're recording this. And I'm sure down the road, it's going to be far more than that when people are watching this. But at this very time, you know, thousands and thousands of people that are going to hear this message. And even if 5 of them walk away and they're like, man, that was amazing, and I really was impacted by this. Like, that's why I do what I do, is like creating that impact, whether it's any business that I'm in, any message that I deliver, any client that I work with, whatever the case may be, it's creating an impact at whatever large scale that I can.
Boom. Second question is, let's say it's when you didn't really tell the story, but I know it just from listening to your podcast is when you left your first corporate job and you're just like, this isn't for me, to where you're at now. What kind of advice would you give to people to get to where you're at now?
Oh God, how much time do we got? So for one, it needs to be a process. All right. So don't make the mistake that I made, which is to just be like, you know what, screw the 9 to 5. And I'm just going to jump into my business and go all in on it right out of the gates. Like I left, I didn't even give it 2 weeks. I'm like, I'm done. Right. And within 6 months, I was doing laundry in my bathtub and I was flat broke and I had collections blowing me up and I lost 50 pounds, which I don't think that I'm the type of person that could lose 50 pounds and afford to lose 50 pounds. Like people were very worried about me at that time. I was eating canned beans and corn and stuff like that because I couldn't afford anything else to eat. So my nourishment was terrible. My stress levels were through the roof because I was in pursuit of this dream, right? So I say this all the time. And for those that know me, you hear me say this all the time, but the dream dies when the bank dries, right? Like your dream, whatever that is, will quickly die when you run out of money and you have no way to fund yourself, right? And your business or the idea for your business is like an infant. It can't even support itself, let alone support you, right? And so it's the same process of nurturing, sending it to its first day of school, right? Like taking those steps, entering into teenage years, teaching it how to drive, being responsible. Like you have to treat your business that way to the point that it gets to a point where that it can then provide for you as well as, take care of itself, right? So you need to have that perspective of your company because too many people just jump in and be like, and this is a positive thing of entrepreneurs. We're very optimistic, right? So we're like, the best case scenario is going to happen because I'm going to will it into existence. And I love that mindset and I love that mentality. And I think you shouldn't lose that, but you also need a plan, right? So prepare for the best and plan for the worst, right? And hopefully you end up somewhere in the middle, right? So what I would do is, and I talk about this all the time, but be a night or a weekend warrior, right? Or a side hustler, right? So find a way to sustain yourself, live your life by margins, right? Make sure you've got enough money. I would say at least 6 months before you leave your job. And this is assuming, right, you're not in college and you're just going to jump straight into your thing, which I don't recommend either. But younger folks, you might have the energy to go out and be a side hustler, right? Just make sure you wear one of these and make sure you monitor your energy, make sure you're eating right.
Can you explain what it is for the people that are listening?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, this thing is a biometric device. It's a Garmin Vivo Smart 4. And basically what it does is it tells me my energy levels, how stressed I am, and I get a body battery, which right now it's at a 62. So if this thing gets, and it's a long drawn explanation, but it measures your HRV, which is a measure of your stress levels, in addition to some other biometric readings, which tells you how much gas you have in the tank, right? Or like we run around and the first thing we do, Ariana Huffington talks about this, we always have something to charge these, right? Always. And for those listening, phone. Yes. If you're not watching, listening, the phone, right? Like we take chargers everywhere. There's one in our cars, one next to our bed, there's one in our office, they're everywhere. But what do we not do? We have no way to recharge ourselves, or we don't even consider that, right? So if you're going to be a side hustler, which means you're doing your business full time and your night and mornings you're driving for Uber, maybe you've got an extra bedroom, you're doing Airbnb, you're doing Uber Eats, you're doing Amazon Flex, like whatever, ways to just pay the bills. You've got 4 or 5 roommates probably. You don't live in the most glamorous place in the world, right? Like but you're living your dream and you're building your business and you're really able to work full time on it, which is what you want. So have ways that you can still fund yourself, right? If you're older, and you have more real world responsibilities, family, kid, mortgage, stuff like that, I recommend you be a night or a weekend warrior, right? Which means, hey, I've got an hour between 6:30 and 7:30 that I can work on my business. I can put out a blog, I can put out a YouTube video, or I can at least record a YouTube video, right? And I can hire an editor, in the Philippines or somebody like yourself to edit my videos because I can't lose this time with my kids because I have that responsibility. They have to go to soccer practice, I have to be at a PTA meeting or whatever, right? But keep continuing to move along. Whenever you have the time to do it, just make sure that there's a non-negotiable time that you have to work on the business, right? Weekends, maybe it's 1 to 4 in the afternoons when everybody's kind of just hanging out and doing their thing or going to the pool and you work on your business. So those are the 2 things that I recommend to make sure that you have that sustainability to transition into your business. And then when it's time, and you'll know when the time comes, when it's time to leave the job or stop the side hustles, hopefully it's dictated by your financial prosperity with your business and growing your revenues. You'll know, hey, I need to be all in, right? Because that's the hard part, is managing that transition, being 100% committed to your startup because that's what it requires, but then also still having this other thing on the side too. So you can operate for a short period of time doing both, right? But at some point you do have to make that full transition, and maybe you work with your spouse or you have something in place where it allows you to make that full leap where you are full-time in your business. But that's the biggest mistake that I see people make, and a mistake that I made on my own was quitting, just axing everything, burning all the ships, which is great. Like, it's great to have that mindset and figuring out how to work, but you want urgency, not desperation, right? So be urgent about building it, but don't get to the point where you're going to be living in your car under a bridge because you left your job and you have no means to support yourself. Because I see that way too often.
Well, hey, CMH, thank you so much.
Sweet, man.
Speaking of that, would you say where people can find you?
Yeah, so obviously Entrepreneur Hour and Entrepreneur Hour TV. So Entrepreneur Hour is the podcast. Feel free to subscribe and listen there. Entrepreneur Hour TV is the brand new YouTube channel, which is not entirely brand new, but it's only been around for like 2 months. So we'd love to see everybody there. Also, we have an amazing thing right now. I think specifically those that are listening, they're like, yeah, I'm kind of feeling like I'm not health-wise where I should be. I did put together a burnout quiz, a business burnout quiz that people can take. It's 100% free to do so. chrismichaelharris.com/burnout-quiz. I can take that again. It's free. It takes you 2 minutes and only 10 questions, and it'll give you a score and an assessment as far as, hey, here's where you are on the burnout scale. So that's the main thing we're working on now. We're really trying to help entrepreneurs with, because it's a growing epidemic that people don't realize. And I've been reading articles like crazy about it, but it is now a medically recognized condition, burnout itself, which is high exposure to high stress environments for long periods of time. So it is a real thing. It is a massive epidemic that's coming, and many of us don't even realize that we have it because it's just this unspoken thing that we don't know about. We're not educated on yet. So we're kind of cutting edge with that. We're kind of ahead of the curve, and you can take that quiz, chrismichaelharris.com/burnout-quiz.
Love it. And I would highly suggest, if you are watching this on YouTube, if any of this information or value has lit a fire underneath you, please go check it out, because he just does this all the time. Aaron, if you're listening to this, please go check out his podcast, because I'm assuming if you got any value out of this, you would already know that the man knows what he's talking about. Until next episode, please share this guy out and live a life of abundance. I'll see you guys next time.